All right, so we're going to take a little bit of time and just review what we did yesterday. So we're going to use the rules for odd and even functions to do numbers 17 and 18 on page 30. So if you would open to page 30 in your notes packet and make sure that you're taking notes. Okay, so I'm going to start as I always do. I'm going to start with the even rule, which is f of x equals f of negative x. Okay, so I'm going to see if this function is even, and that's your even rule. All right, well, I already have f of x there, so let's do f of negative x. So I'm going to plug in a negative x. I'm going to raise that to the fifth power, minus 2 times a negative x. I'm going to raise that to the third power, and then minus a negative x. Sorry, I'm squeezing that in there. That's 2 negatives there. Okay, so then in the denominator, I am going to take that negative x and I'm going to square that and I'm going to add 1. Okay, so let's see what I have here. So f of negative x is equal to, now a negative x, if I raise it to the fifth power, a negative 5 times would still be a negative, right? So that's going to be a negative x to the fifth. And be a little careful here. I have a negative raised to the third power, which will keep it negative, but then times this negative will make that a positive 2x cubed. And then, and again, we have a double negative here, so that's going to make that positive x. And in the denominator, a negative x, if I square that, is still positive, and then plus 1. Okay, so now let's look at these two terms right here, and we can see clearly that they are not the same, okay? So I'm going to put this in red just so you can see what I'm doing. So these are not equal, so therefore, and I'm going to squeeze this in, it is not even. Okay, so now let's do the odd rule. Now you know the odd rule is this, f of negative x, and we want to see if it's equal to negative f of x. Okay, so let's start with negative f of x. Okay, now remember, negative f of x, when you have a fraction, you can negate the numerator or the denominator. You cannot negate both. So I notice if I look at this numerator here and I negate everything here, it will match that. So I'm going to go with negate the numerator, okay? So if I negate the numerator of f of x, the original function, I get negative x to the fifth, I get a positive 2x cubed, and I get a positive x. And then we keep the denominator the same, okay? So now, looking at these two right here, I see that those do match. So negative f of x equals f of negative x, so therefore it is an odd function. Okay? All right, let's look at 18. So we're going to do the same thing. So let's start with f of negative x. Okay, so that's going to give me 4 plus negative x. I'm going to square that quantity. Then in the denominator, I'm going to get negative x, and I'm going to raise that quantity to the fourth power. Okay, let's go one more step here. All right, so when I raise an even power, or when I take an even power, and I've got, I'm not saying this right at all. When I have negative x and I raise it to an even power, remember the negative will disappear. And the same thing here, even power, that negative will disappear. So essentially what I have is x squared up there in the numerator with the 4, and down here I have x to the fourth. And if you look at these two, those match. So make sure that you state the rule. So f of x equals f of negative x. There's the rule. And then you say, therefore, in this case, that is an even function. Okay, make sure you're taking notes in your notes packet. All right, so turn the page and look at page 31. We're looking at number 19 at the top. I love these questions. Complete the left half of the graph so that the function in part A is even. So these are pretty cool. So what you do is, I'm going to change colors here so you can see it a little bit better. I try to match this point here, and if it's even, right, is a reflection in the y-axis. So I'm going to just take this over to here, and I'm going to put a dot. Okay. All right, so that's going to be at -1, 3. Sorry, my pen is not is a little too thick. Then here, instead of being at 4, 1, I'm going to be at -4, 1. So I go to all like the kind of big important kind of points there. Okay, and then I'm going to look at this point all the way up here, which is out 5, and then it's up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and I'm going to go in the opposite direction, so I'm going to go -5, and then up, 5. There we go. And then all I do is connect my dots. Sorry, that didn't go down to the origin. Okay, and there is your even function. You'll draw better because, you know, you've got a piece of paper. All right, and now with B, we kind of have to do the opposite because they want a function that is odd. So instead of 1, 3, like I have up here, I'm going to go -1, down 3, and I'm going to put a dot there. Okay, because we want it to be symmetric with the origin. And then instead of 4, 1, like I have, oopsie, let me undo that. I thought I had my pointer on. Instead of 4, 1, like I have here, I'm going to do -4, -1. Okay, so we're going in the complete opposite direction. So 1, 2, 3, 4, -1 is going to be like here-ish. Okay, and then lastly, instead of 5, 5, I'm going to have -5, -5, which is down there-ish. And then we connect those. Okay, and then you can see if you rotate your paper upside down, it should look the same as it does right side up. All right, turn the page, and why don't you do all of the top of page 32, A, B, C, and D. So pause me, do those, and then turn the video back on and you can check your work. Alrighty, so here are your answers for A and C. So take a good look at those. Okay, you can see the points that I kind of tried to focus on here, here, and down here. I tried to focus on that one and this one. Sorry, that looks a little wonky, but you get the idea. Okay, and now I'm going to put up B and D. And there is B and D. Okay, now look at the bottom of page 32. I'd like you to work on those. I want you to use the actual rules, like f of x equals f of -x, like we did in the beginning of the video. So I want you to pause me for 1 and 2, do them, and then turn the video back on and you can check your answers. Okay, and there are your answers for number 1 and 2 at the bottom of page 32. Just one little quick note. Remember, when we negate f of x here, all we're doing is we're negating every term here. So this is a positive 6x cubed, it becomes negative. This is a negative 9x, it becomes positive. Okay? It's just with the fractions that you have to be a little careful. Alrighty? Okay, so then what I would like you to do is let's have you turn the page, and we're going to go to page 33. All right, and I would like for you to practice again doing number 4 and number 6. So if you would pause me for a moment and just work on 4, 6, and actually let's have you do 8 and 10 as well. Okay, so pause me, do the evens on page 33. And then turn the video back on and check your answers. All right, so there are your answers to 4 and 6. Maybe pause me, check them out, see if you got the same thing, and then I'm going to post 8 and 10. And here are your answers to 8 and 10. Okay, now at this point, once you've checked, and if you need to pause me, go ahead and pause me. You have an ed puzzle tonight. It is going to be due on the 15th. Please understand, it says it in Google Classroom if you read it. The ed puzzle's on transformations. It does not correspond with the packet, so you won't be taking notes in your packet, you know, corresponding with the actual examples in the packet. Okay? But again, that will be due on the 15th.